Hi, my name is Cheryl, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my symptomology since, well, I would say about October of 2020, late October of 2020, early November of 2020. I'm not going to go extensively into that because it wasn't as much as occurred later on in the next year. But I started having, I got exposed to somebody who had COVID, and I didn't know. I had been pretty careful, I guess, as careful as you can be when you're a human being. We go out into the public, even if we're wearing whatever we're wearing, we go out into the public and we breathe common air and go to common places. Didn't go a lot of places. I was pretty in my house, but I would go on walks. That was mainly outdoors, so I don't consider that to be risky at all, and didn't back then. But I ended up in the car to go to my herbalist's office in October 2020 and got exposed. And so after that, I was very stressed out and a lot was going on. So in fairness, we had been through some stuff in the Pacific Northwest that was traumatizing. And then, I don't know, I was going through a lot of stress with my car and mechanics and some friendship issues. And so, I started having this weird sweating though, and it was concentrated in my armpits. That's what I remember. And anytime I would try to talk to anybody, I would get profuse sweating in that area, and most of my talking was done through video chats, so that effectively cut me off from most video chats. It just was horrible. There was only one exception to that. It was one person. It was an online, telehealth thing that I did once a week. And for some reason, I never sweat with this person. I have no idea why. I had extreme panic, and my sleeping became much more challenged. And I started to get to where I didn't want to go out of the house. I started to develop agoraphobic feelings, and it was a really horrible time. And that went on, and I still was eating. This is something I remember. I was still eating fairly well, though. And that went on until about January of 2021. And so I wanted to just start out with that. And so I'll come back to that. There's two separate lists of symptoms. So one of them is early summer, maybe late spring of 2020. And so the first thing that I noticed is I was having widespread body pain. I had not been having pain. I had not been having pain from probably for the latter part of 2019. It started to die down, and this was even in cold. I'd go out on cold walks and I didn't have that much pain. And then January, February, March 2020, I had a little bit of an upkick in March. And then all through the rest of the year until October, I didn't have hardly any pain. I was really fortunate. I did get something, I got strep throat or something in February of 2020. So I had a pretty wide span of luck, I guess, considering my condition. And I felt very good about that. And so in the early summer or late spring of 2021, I started seeing this increase though, and it was in my nerves and my tendons, my fingers, my hands, my wrists, my knees, particularly if I bent my knees, or if I even wore jeans or clothing that was just normal fitting. So I'm talking about it wasn't tight fitting clothing, so it could even be my sweats that I'm wearing right now. I still have a little bit of this. My feet hurt. If I had socks on, my feet hurt. I still get some of that right now. And if my feet touched any part of the couch for any period of time, the joints would kill in my toes, and my feet would hurt. I had bought a couch, and I had to switch the pillows out, use these different pillows for a while. It's just been bizarre. And so toenails hurt at the corners of my big toes and all my toes, but mainly my big toes. It's something I've had in the past when I was pretty sick. So it was kind of like reliving my symptoms from 2009 to 2011. And um, the second, that was like one thing. So pain increase. And then the second symptoms that I noticed was my stomach. So I was having a continuation of, I think I'd had some indigestion, but I was having a continuation of indigestion. And sometimes, like, and this might be TMI, but like just indigestion and kind of like diarrhea. And that was causing it was like, oh, it was just so painful. It almost reminded me of when I had Coxsackie, because I was getting like, oh, it's too private, but I was getting like rash. And I had slow moving intestines. And my appetite was very low at this time, which was a big change. I had been eating 3 times a day at least. And I became quite disgusted by food. And foods that I had previously eaten, they became very unappealing to me. So I would go through the motions of, I'd have to force myself to eat, but I was really worried. I became worried about not eating, which was something that had happened to me in the past, particularly from 2018 to, late 2019. I had this extreme fear that developed, and so I was worried about not eating because my stomach was so sick, and there's really no medications that I can take to stop that. And then I was having like gagging with swallowing of my supplements or pills or even brushing my teeth. I had neck rigidity, and I had like pain in different parts of my head. And so like some of that was right here. A lot of it was centered in the temples, but some of it was up top. And I'd get like eye pain. And I had twitching inside my ears, and even like above my ears, like right here, I'd have twitching. And I had noise sensitivity, so that's kind of hard to describe, but like if I remember having this conversation with somebody and I had my earbuds in and he was talking kind of loudly. Anyway, he has a really good mic on his phone, and I was just like in so much pain. Like I tried everything. I tried like wrapping my earbuds in toilet paper, and I had the volume way turned down. I always do that anyway. And then I eventually switched to a different set of earbuds and only used one of them. So I just had like noise sensitivity. It wasn't like the worst, but it was an increase. And I started getting these bumps on my scalp, and they almost start like a pimple does, like an annoying pimple that doesn't do anything. And then they kind of like, they develop like, I call it psoriasis-like, because that's what, or eczema-like. It reminds me of that. And at the same time that I got that, I got really severely dry eyes. And when I got that symptom, I was bothered, because that symptom, it causes an improper lubrication of my eyes. And when I have that, like, so even doing something like this, my eyes, it was late at night. That's what was weird about it. But at first it was not. But it would be, I'd start like not being able to blink. Like I didn't have proper lubrication on my eyes, and I had bumps. Like I had what looked like, how you get a sty, but I had that all over. I had inflammation all around my eyelid. And I went on antibiotic drops. It kind of worked, but it ended up seeming like I had more excretion and kind of crustiness on my eyes. And I went through a couple different antibiotics, and then I used this stuff, and I cannot remember the name of it. Well, it's Avenova. If anyone really needs, it's Avenova, and you just clean your eyes with that. And I got it under control, but for some reason I still wanted to try an antibiotic, so I used, oh God, I can't think of the name of it now. And I really wanted the drug too. Can't think of it. If I can remember, I'll put it in the description, but I'm not sure that I will. Do you remember the name of that drop that I got, the drop, antibiotic drops? I can't believe I can't remember it. Something site or something like that. Azicite. And I took that. Didn't really do me much good. But it did kind of stop some of it. But I think most of that stopped with Avenova. Just anyone kind of curious what to do out there. And drops. I used sterile drops. I think they're genteel. That's what I ended up settling on. Then I started getting these bumps on my arms. And I know that that's called keratosis pilaris, but I think that's what it's called. But it's really itchy in me, and it's not normal. Okay, like in me, I don't get that kind of stuff, and I know a lot of the population gets it, but I still associate it with an inflammatory response. And then I got like these squishy type things behind my ears that I don't even know how to describe it. And they were small though, and they would come and go. And actually my daughter got some of that too. It's been kind of a chronic problem in our household. And I had severe insomnia, and I would wake up really early, even though I'm going to bed at like 4, sometimes later. I couldn't sleep because of my eyes, because you lie down and go to sleep and your eyes don't have any lubrication on them, so you wake up and you can't open your eyes. And I would like freak out, and then I'd have to wake up and put drops in my eyes. So I had started having to take sleeping pills again just to cope. Like I hadn't been taking any sleeping pills up until this point. I'd just been using like CBD oil, if that. Sometimes I haven't went without that. And I've got a list out because this is too much for me to remember. But I had severe panic and separation anxiety. This is something I actually also had the year, like I had in October. I called it separation anxiety. If I disconnected from anyone, like in any way, and even when I didn't, it felt terrible. And it was worse at night, and as morning approached, in the early morning, it was just horrible. I had racing thoughts, kind of freaky, scary thoughts, and I think I started to have bad dreams a little bit in through there. And I also noticed an upkick in sweating again at this time in the summer, but usually it was during exertion, so when I would walk, but it's not something I was struggling with extensively. Like it prevented me from walking. It just didn't feel right. And I had a real lack of motivation and energy. That's something that's kind of persisted. And I had difficulty going from outdoor hot temperatures to air conditioned temperatures inside. Like it was just like, ugh, like I hated it. And that, again, is sort of a revisiting of symptoms that used to happen, those temperature things from years ago, except for sort of toned down and not as bad as it was from 2009 to 2011. I've had bouts of this for the last 10 to 20 years. And I also started having, I put it in quotes, but like suicidal feelings, suicidal ideation. And I had a lot of rib cage pain. It was very painful. I don't know what the hell that's. It's on the screen. It starts to tell you certain things. I'm going to unplug something. Okay. Sorry about that if it interfered, if I put my finger in front of the camera. But I notice if I'm charging that at the same time, it can sometimes be a warning. But so now I'm going to jump forward. And this is a list that I wrote in about October of 2021. And so I was starting to have the same pattern of sweating again. And that went from October 2021 to maybe a couple weeks ago. And I hesitate to say it's gone because never say never, And then I had extreme noise sensitivity. It was even worse than the previous noise sensitivity that I mentioned, though. So my ears killed, and they had buzzing in them, inside them. Like it felt like there was buzzing, like my eardrums were kind of buzzing, and I had twitching, mainly inside my ears, but sometimes above it too. And it got more strong. It was just unbearable. I had to have noisemakers on all day, and that was still true for a long time. That went on for maybe, I don't know, a month or something like that, but it also was coupled with sensitivity to bright light and indoor lighting. Like these lights that I have on now, I could never have had them. I had to start using orange light and red light. And indoor light would also trigger noise sensitivity and pain. So I've had some improvement. the noisemakers quit working eventually, and I had to try like earplugs, which I think made my ear problems worse. It didn't really help. And I tried pink noise. I think it's called pink noise, and even some different varieties of noise on the computer, which seemed to help a little bit, but it just didn't work. So I started turning the noisemakers way down, which has persisted a little bit at times. Like I just have to turn them off. It's the only way I can function, though. I can't sleep without that on. And that's frustrating to me because I had stopped having that issue. And I think I've talked about that. Maybe I haven't. I realized that I was having ear pressure, like eustachian tube dysfunction. So I would blow my nose and I'd feel pressure coming out of my inner ears. And it's not a good feeling. It was like you're on an airplane and you just keep doing that. It goes on all day. And I had buzzing in my head, above my ears, throughout my spine, and my whole body. This is a difficult symptom to really describe, but if you have a Honda and you want to take it to like Auto Tech International in Portland and have them put some bad mounts on your car, then you can get in your car and start it, and that pretty much replicates how I felt. Sorry, I have to joke a little bit. So basically, like I said, go to Auto Tech International if you want to feel my symptoms. Just get bad engine mounts put in your car. And then you get in there and start the car up, and you'll get a pretty good feeling. My daughter told me she thought that's probably how it felt, and she's correct. It's quite true. It really is unnerving to get into my car now. Thank you, Auto Tech International. I needed that in the middle of all this shit. And I had urinary nerve pain with all over body, full body nerve pain. Nerve pain is really insidious and difficult to describe. It's very burny and it's just awful. Oh. But once I would notice urinary spasming, then I would notice that it went full body wide. I had salivation, like I was gonna get sick. And except for I didn't always feel nauseous, but I didn't want to eat. It certainly didn't help. And I had changes in taste. One night my sardines tasted like bubble gum. Bubblegum like I used to eat, way back a long time ago when I actually chewed, not ate, but that'd be gross. But I chewed it. And I could never stand bubblegum. I think there was like a bubble yum type of gum. I don't know. Anyway, that was gross. I ate it, but it was like, this is gross. And I knew something was wrong. That was not an isolated incident. There were taste changes that I had. But I don't think I ever repeated the fish bubblegum incident. I had a lack of appetite, and that's kind of persisted, but it's gotten a little bit better. And I had a lot of GI, like bloating. And the thing about the bloating is I was eating a lot of onions and stuff. I wasn't having any trouble, but I started having trouble and difficulty with onions, and that was a lot of my salads. And what made me love salads was this red onion that I would eat raw, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't eat garlic. It took out a lot of my diet. I couldn't eat cabbage. I started anything brassica, even if it was cooked. I couldn't eat either. And potatoes, bread, like all that stuff started being problematic. Even lasagna, stuff that I'd been eating, couldn't eat it. And I had, again, severe panic beyond what I have felt in years. The last time I felt this type of panic was really either in 2011 when I was really catastrophically ill, like I was in a wheelchair ill, and at the height of my illness, or in 2018, I also had severe panic when I had Coxsackie B family viruses and was told that I had I'd been exposed or was showing potential exposure to the Lyme virus. I was actually told I had it, and Q fever, and like a complete reactivation of all of my infectious diseases, chronic ones. And that was in 2018. And then I started getting breathing issues, and I got a little worried about my lungs because I usually don't have trouble breathing, and I certainly didn't have trouble breathing in masks, but I started developing trouble breathing in masks, and that has persisted. In fact, you can kind of see it in me. I just took a big breath in, and I have a mask on. And I had eye issues that were still persistent, kind of like some conjunctivitis, not as bad, and some dry eye and that's still going on. I've noticed that I don't always use eye drops at night though, so a little bit backing off of the eye problems. I certainly don't use them when I get up all the time. I do what's called rapid blinking, and if you're interested in that, I can do a video on it, or you can look up rapid blinking. I have a diagnosis of autoimmune Sjogren's syndrome, and that's something that I found to be beneficial along with fish oil and flax oil. I'm not recommending that anyone do it, but I am going to tell you that that helped for me. It was incredible. Like 2 to 4 grams of fish oil, or I often took flax oil. The one thing that I know that is dangerous or can be dangerous about that is if someone's on blood thinners, or if they're a bleeder, or if they're on medications that can cause it. So I'm just kind of FYI, like check with your provider, whatever provider you're going to. They will be able to guide you in that, or at least do some research. And then the scalp stuff persisted, and I kind of call it like psoriasis-like or eczema-like, and the continuation of this kind of like skin issues on my arms that I associate a little bit with inflammation, and not just a little bit, but a lot with it, and then essential fatty acid deficiency. And that also happened back in, not the bumps on my arm, I didn't get that, but I got like facial stuff and scalp stuff that was similar to it, really itchy, and when I was diagnosed with Lyme disease and co-infections in 2011, I had what they call goose syndrome in Chinese medicine, and I just kind of repeat here at the end that the gastrointestinal problems are really, really bad. And so the problem with my picture, and I know this has been long, but the problem with my picture that I have in telling whether or not something's COVID or something's Lyme disease or whatever the hell it is that there's crossover between those two conditions. Lyme, though, and Lyme, it's in quotes because there's a lot of pathogens, seems to have, like, it's more migratory pain, like it can go from joint to joint to joint, although I was always lucky and I usually got it bilaterally. I'm kidding. But from what I've heard about COVID, I thought that was like aching all over, like it just kind of like really bad pain sometimes when people get it. I also have a little bit of complicating factors in that I've had 2 negative COVID tests, actually 3. 2 were nasal swabs that I did on my own, and 1 was done locally, though, at a place. I swabbed on my own. It was a rapid test. 1 was one where I had to send it off to a lab. It was earlier on, maybe like in 2020, earlier on. And then I had a PCR test, also negative, and then I had a blood test to check for like the presence of exposure to COVID-19, and that was negative too. And I think that was a couple of months ago, and I tested positive for Epstein-Barr reactivation. Like in parts, you could see it was really high numbers, like horrific numbers. So when you get different things going on at once, it gets really difficult to tell what's causing what. And what's interesting is my herbalist told me about Epstein-Barr months and months before I actually asked my MD to test me for it. But he called it like Pfeiffer syndrome, and he did put EBV there, but I didn't put it together, and I didn't know I take herbs, I don't know what else to do. So yeah, it just goes to show that herbalists can catch on to stuff way before our medical doctors do, and most people call what machine he's using, they would call it quackery. But he's gotten it right too many times. He got Coxsackie before my doctor confirmed it in blood tests. He caught on to that I had Epstein-Barr months and months before she did. And so whatever he's doing works. Even she's acknowledged that. So why I'm talking about all this stuff. So I have another video that I'm going to share because it's more comprehensive, but I actually am bothered by the measures that have been taken in society, despite my immune system, I don't necessarily feel like we're really evaluating the effects that it can have socially and whether or not it's actually working, like a lot of the stuff that we've done, how much it really has worked. I'm not even sure we can really say how much it worked because different areas are going to have different situations. And so it might be beneficial for some environments and not beneficial in other environments. Like, say, for instance, masking might have its place. But I do know that cloth masks it doesn't look like, I know the CDC said that I saw somebody talking, a scientist talking today about it, but he was very doubtful about that, and I agree with him. From what I've looked at this Bangladesh study, even though I'm not a scientist, I agree with him. And so, even with that though, I have noticed that people will come to me and they're complaining about, that they didn't test positive and they had like some cold symptoms. And I'm like, you're complaining that you had cold symptoms for like 7 days or less, or that your child didn't get cold symptoms and but tested positive. This is frustrating to me as somebody who's been through everything that I've been through. I mean, you heard the list. And I actually consider myself quite fortunate. And I've been now contending with these symptoms really since last summer. It's been horrendous. Even last spring, it wasn't great. And I had the bout before that from October to January. October of 2020 to January 2021. I've not been in good shape, but I consider myself lucky because so many people, even if it was a small percentage, we don't really know the percentages of everything, so I shouldn't probably say that, but it was a large number of people that got really devastating symptoms, like my symptoms plus, like they had to have oxygen assistance. And I just, I feel lucky that I didn't have to go to the ER and I didn't have to be in a situation where I couldn't see my family, although I haven't been able to see my family, but my daughter, and like people were able to come and at least drop stuff off at my house, not come inside, but come and drop stuff off at my house. And I just, I feel lucky. And here people are coming to me and complaining. And I think, it's understandable if you come and talk to me about your problems. And I don't mean you guys, you can message me if you want. If I have to figure out a way to I think people can comment down below, but I'll have to figure out a way if I can put an email address. But the thing is that if you're complaining about stuff that's really petty, I'm not going to be happy. But if you're saying, hey, I feel really like agoraphobic, and I feel, because I'm agoraphobic too, I don't think I mentioned that in here, but and that this is getting really tiresome. Like, it's been 2 years, it's been almost 2 years. For some people it's been 2 years. I didn't really know the first couple months, so I was actually out and about in January and February of 2020 and even March. But I get that, and I get the frustration with not being able to put a mask on and not feeling like you can breathe. And the masks that are really being recommended are N95, and those are like, I can't wear them because my breathing problems, it's too much. And I know people might say, well, do you want worse breathing problems? No, I don't. But yet I can't wear an N95 mask. I mean, even there's like a strip that goes over those, like right around the bridge of the nose to seal off that area. I had to take that off because I had an asthma attack after wearing it for 1 or 2 minutes. So true N95 masks, they cause all sorts of problems for me. I can't wear them, even if they're great and awesome. And you have to really look to make sure these masks are being rated, because they apparently, even with KN95, there's some better ones. I think it's called N95 Project. I'm not endorsing masks, but if somebody wants the information, they can have it. I think, and I talk about this in other videos, so I'm not going to talk about it here. I think we're coming to a point in society where a lot of people have had exposure, have had a response, or they've had vaccinations. Some of them had double or triple vaccinations. And I think we're coming into a phase where we're seeing endemic. Now this is turning endemic, and it's going to be something we're going to contend with in our society. And hopefully it will turn into a thing that's like a cold, But I think we'll see some serious outcomes still. Americans And this is in no way discounting the disastrous consequences that happen in some people at all, or even the ones that were mild but led to some like purple toes and, you know, problems. It's not at all. But we have a lot of problems in the United States with proper nutrition, and just we eat, I hesitate to say this, but overall as a society, we eat like crap. We, I don't, but I don't always eat well, but I've outed sugar. I keep salt intake down, and I try to eat healthy foods. You know, like when I have chocolate, it's like a little tiny piece of this dark chocolate usually, and I don't even have it that often. And the American public, it drinks, there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of smoking, there's a lot of unhealthy habits, and now we've got a sedentary lifestyle. We're in our houses all the time, so we got vitamin D deficiency, and we have a lot of type 2 diabetes in our population, not just with adults, but with children. That's just one situation. It's not the only one. Some of them, I'm not even blaming people on some of these things. That I'm not blaming, actually, no one should be blamed for illness ever, so that came out wrong. But we can certainly take measures that some of us can take measures. Some of the lucky people that have money, or that just, I don't know, that we're coping better, or we have access to food, can make better choices about diet, I think. But that's a complicated discussion too, because there are some communities that don't even have access to good stores. They have access to shit stores. And so, no, it's not that easy to solve their problems. And I'm just trying to think of other things like asthma. My brother has asthma, and my other members of my family have asthma. It's very tough to contend with this stuff. And there are other comorbid conditions I'm not familiar with. I think there's some comorbid heart conditions. America as a whole has a problem with excess weight and, you know, like obesity. And I don't think that's a good thing for this. And so, you know, that seems like an easy problem to solve, but it's not an easy problem to solve. Even if you quit eating at fast food restaurants and quit eating prepared foods, which hasn't been the easiest to do during this time, that's not going to solve all of our problems. Sometimes it's metabolic, and sitting in your house for 2 years doesn't exactly make your metabolism better. And a lot of those months, there were months and months and months on end where people just were afraid to go out and were told to stay in. So I know we were told you can go out for essential exercise, but you know, that's not always possible or feasible, and I think there was a lot of depression that ensued. But I maintain my position that I am frustrated with people who want to complain that they, you know, gosh, it's been so annoying to not be able to do something for 2 or 3 days. Like, they act like that's a major inconvenience. And they don't actually have a problem with that. That they don't have a need to go to work or anything. They can take a couple days off, and they're bitching about it. Or they're not even going to work, and they're like, oh gosh, it's so hard, you know, and they've been getting out and everything, going out to places, public places, and they're like, oh gosh, it's so hard to have this cold for a couple days. And they're talking to someone like me who's saying I'm fortunate. And it is very frustrating. And so I kind of wanted like a little bit better organizing to show my symptoms, to talk about that frustration, so that if you see the other video where I'm just like really frustrated and doing my whole Indian eye thing where I move my eyes all around, because I consider that like an East Indian thing at this point, that you'll understand. And I have South Asian background, so I get to make that comment. Plus it's my eyes. I want people to understand that I'm coming from a position of, you know, just, I understand people's frustration, but really, if you get sick and you're sick for 2 to 7 days, you are so lucky. You're so lucky that you can function. I can barely have my furnace on. Still, the fan in the kitchen still hurts my ears. Now, I'm lucky right now. I'm having a moment where that's not, but it's kind of a little bit hitting this eardrum, and like, I don't know how to describe it. It's a very ick feeling. But I'm lucky. And I don't know what time it is. I have no idea. What time is it?
3:30.
3:30. I'll be going to bed in an hour. Actually, I'll be going to bed in 45 minutes because I'm trying to back it up about 15 minutes per night so I can try to reset my schedule. So keep that in mind when you're going on and on about stuff to people that may have been through a lot, like keep it in mind that especially if you're able to go out, you're able to interact, you've got the social circle, you've got people around you. There's some people who haven't had that. There are kids that haven't had the accessibility to food at all during this in other countries that haven't had accessibility to medical care. There are kids in the United States that are just so in these communities where they don't have as much access to even just good grocery stores, and they got told to stay home, and their parents, there maybe two of them are working, and there's a lot of double working parents even not in those communities. And they had to try to teach their kids. Like no one was prepped for that, to be a teacher while they're working, both parents are working. And then you can't go to work and your life depends upon it. I know we got some money. People got like pandemic, payments, and some people did somewhat better on that, but that's not a full solution to problems either. It doesn't really solve the problem of having to deal with teaching a kid at home, especially if that child has special needs. This is a complicated discussion and a complicated societal problem. It's really sad. And like I said, with all of that said, some of the measures that we put in place, I really think were detrimental, and I'm not sure how much they helped across the board. I think some areas they probably did a lot more harm than other areas. Some areas they might have helped. It's hard to say when it's really hard to analyze this stuff. So, I don't know. I hope we're going to start getting back into the normal society that we were, normal as it could be, for society pretty soon. And I hope that people will take with them this message instead of taking with them the message that we're going to stay in masks the rest of our life, because we weren't born with a mask on our face. Maybe wash your hands before eating. Maybe wash your hands before cooking. Just basic. Don't go overboard. Use sanitizing liquid maybe when you don't have access to anything else. If you're going to eat, your hands can actually handle some germs on them as long as you're not touching your face all the time. Stay away from mucous membranes. Cover your cough and sneeze. Stay back a few feet from people, Don't be pulling up a storm if you're sick and you know it. Use some caution. Asymptomatic's always going to be out there. That's the reason it's called asymptomatic. If you don't have any symptoms of something, you're not going to know you have it. So at some point, we're going to have to reintegrate in society. And I think with vulnerable people like myself and other people, I believe that we're going to have to try to implement strategies that make sense to try to help those people, and they'll probably have to use, because I know I'm going to have to use I'll probably use surgical masks or just distancing. That's what I always did. I think that worked better than masking for me, and just kind of taking some supplements like vitamin D, zinc. This is for me. Vitamin D, zinc, selenium. What's that called? Oh, God. Glutathione. Not everyone can take glutathione, and not everyone can take all that other stuff either. Fish oil supplements, and just healthy eating. So low sugar, low salt. And I hope we take some messages away from society that aren't so based and rooted in fear. Because I've discussed this before. I'm not going to go into a big thing on it, but fear taxes the immune system. I know these last two videos, the one that I'm going to post and this one here, are very long. This one's even longer. But in order to go through those kinds of symptoms, you have to take longer to explain them. So I was going as fast as I could. So I hope you enjoyed this. I know it wasn't very fun to probably listen to someone be sick and hear all their symptoms. But I do wonder if anyone does watch this, did you have any of these symptoms? And if you have Lyme or anything, go ahead and put it down there. If you have a coexisting condition, have you had a positive COVID test, negative COVID test? Do you have any of the conditions I'm talking about? And do you have any thoughts about what's going on in society? Please try to keep it respectful, no matter what part of the political spectrum that you're on. I don't like this political trashing that's going on. It's leading to a lot of division and polarization. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not even going to get into my own politics right now. I'm getting to a point where I'm almost getting apolitical, although I definitely have opinions. I don't think they belong in this discussion. Not really. For the record, I didn't get vaccinated because I'm afraid that it might actually make me sicker. With everything that's going on, I would not be able to tell the difference between symptoms from vaccination and symptoms that I'm having now. I think almost anyone watching this should be able to appreciate that. Anyway, take care. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to, you can subscribe. I don't know anything about that bill, so I'm not going to mention it. I tend to not like to get, this is just a transparency, I don't like getting notifications in my email box for YouTube. It's annoying as hell. So, you can just go to YouTube and look up the stuff that you want to look up when you want to look it up. But if you want to subscribe, go ahead and do so. Anyway, take care. Bye-bye.